I apologize for being late. Do you have a question?
I don't.
Okay.
Oh, if I think of one, I'll
I
pass it
have a
on.
question.
I went to Eastgate for some reason.
That was my question. Where did you go?
So I had Meyer in my head. I just saw Meyer.
There's more than one.
Yeah, I just had that.
Did you pick up eggs while you were there? Yeah.
I apologize. Thank you for your patience. And I'm Jason Williams, a political columnist for the Cincinnati.com Inquirer, and honored to be here tonight to be with everyone. Though I'm 15 minutes late, I apologize again. Thanks for having me here tonight, and it's an honor. I'll go over the ground rules, and then I want to give each candidate a few minutes to introduce themselves. All of what we have here tonight are commissioner candidates for Clermont County, Chris Hicks, John Becker, John McGraw. John McGraw and John Becker, along with Bonnie Batchler.
Bonnie Batchler.
Bonnie Batchler, sorry, are running for Ed Humphrey's seat as he's retiring, and Chris Hicks is running along with incumbent Mr. Painter, David Painter, are running for that seat. The ground rules this evening will be all candidates for the office selected for the former have been invited. All candidates have already had until February 1 to respond, so everyone was invited. Obviously, we know some folks are not here this evening. It is being recorded and live streamed, I believe, by the Clermont Sun. Candidates will be given 3 minutes to make opening remarks to begin the forum. Candidates will be given 1 minute to respond to questions. Candidates will be given 2 minutes to make a closing statement. There will be no substitutes or stand-ins tonight. Questions can be submitted by everyone, which I've had in the audience, and if you would also still like to submit a question, I'm going to go ahead and just say, you're welcome to do that. If there's something that comes up here, or something that just pops in your head, like, hey, I'd love to ask about that, just don't worry about being rude. Just come right up here and throw it on the podium, tap me on the back, and give it to me. Members of the audience will have the opportunity to meet the candidates afterward in the outside meeting room, and candidates will be allowed to distribute literature, signs at that time. So let's get started. I'm just gonna go left to right. I didn't flip a coin or anything, but I'd love for Mr. McGraw, please introduce yourself, and you have a few minutes to tell everyone about yourself.
All right, great. First of all, thanks, Jason Williams, for being here, and Brett Milan from the Clermont Sun. Thank you for participating. And thank you to all the residents who came and those in the future who will watch this. Really appreciate people being engaged in election. It's great to have a primary election where people can actually make a decision who the candidates are going to be. There's a lot of unopposed candidates running, and so it's great to have actual races where there are choices. And I think that's important in having a good election, a free, fair election. So I'm John McGraw. I'm a Union Township trustee right now. I'm in my second term, and I've got a lot of experience with local government and things that go on from Union Township's perspective. But Union Township's the biggest township in the county, close to 50,000 residents, and we have a full-time police department, fire department. So we have a big staff, and so I'm used to running a big staff. And we have a great team there. So I think teamwork is essential. So those are my main things: teamwork, transparency. They're so important. But another thing I'll address tonight is corruption at the county level. There's been a lot of corruption over the years, and I think that's an important topic. So I would appreciate your consideration, and I hope you vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Becker?
Sure.
I'm John Becker. I'm your state representative. I've been elected since 2012, so you get 8 years and out, and so I am in my 8th and final year, and now running for commissioner to replace Ed Humphrey. Most of you might know me by what the media refers to me as the most conservative legislator in the Iowa General Assembly. Well, that's true, and there's a reason for that. I'm also a Trump Republican. But I'm conservative because some issues I'm very passionate about. You know, the first and foremost is being pro-life. And with that, I am endorsed by Ohio Right to Life and Cincinnati Right to Life for this office. Also endorsed by Family First PAC, as well as the conservative groups. On the fiscal side, I'm also endorsed by Ohio Citizens PAC. And you know, I vote against a lot of spending bills in Ohio. I hate spending money. I hate spending your money, and you know, it's not the government's money. So that's why I've earned that reputation. So my platform has always been, you know, pro-life, pro-gun, limited government, and lower taxes. There's also about issues and endorsements. My number 2 issue right after pro-life is pro-Second Amendment. I'm also endorsed by the Buckeye Firearms Association with an A+ rating. That's a highly exclusive rating, by the way. Not everybody gets an A+, it's tough to earn that. And also the NRA has me rated as an A+ as well. They don't endorse in county races. So just to kind of quickly go down my resume. So I went to Northern Kentucky University, got my bachelor's degree in business management with a minor in psychology. I went on to Xavier University, got an MBA with an emphasis in taxation. I went to the Union Township Citizens Police Academy. I also have a CTP, it's a Certified Treasury Professional, and I have a school district treasurer's license. Also, we have, going down my work experience, I have 30 years of business experience, where most of that was at Provident Bank in a finance role. So what I did for Provident for 8 years was budgeting and planning. So that was for the whole corporate bank, so that's the subsidiaries underneath what was Provident Bank. The bank itself was one of the subsidiaries. That what I did was all of the corporate level budgeting and planning for the entire organization. And why that's important to you and why you're considering me for commissioner is because when the day comes and we have a recession, and recessions come as surely as night follows day, then who do you want sitting in the commissioner's office making the tough decisions about spending and taxes and what we're going to cut where in terms of spending? So with my background as a fiscal analyst, the type of guy who can run spreadsheets and do financial modeling, that's the experience I have in the private sector, and that is what I'm going to be taking into the commissioner's office. I am a candidate who is vetted, tested, and proven.
Thank you very much, Mr. Becker. Mr. Hicks?
So I am Chris Hicks, and my background is as a consultant to about 6 Fortune 500 companies typically, and I'm kind of on a quest to clean up the political system in Clermont County and to change our government to be much more efficient, much more open, much more transparent, and much more effective. Everybody knows that I have a couple dimensions to me. I'm relentless on transparency, on ethics and integrity. There's a couple of politicians that have mugshots now because of that relentlessness that I have on those issues. I'm also very big on clean government, and I'm big on having a real platform, a real measurable platform, which hopefully we'll talk about more here, that we would do some things in this county that could really move us forward. And I like that. I'm never afraid of talking about the controversial things. And so, for example, there's demonization of Union Township sometime because of the use of tips and so forth. Look at Union Township. It's the most fastest growing township, the most economically powerful township in our county. What if we could start replicating some of that stuff in other places? I'm a strong believer we got to quit demonizing marriage. We got to look for effective solutions, and we have to move things forward. I have online, if you go look online, I have a 17-point platform currently. At Saturday's forum that we had at over at RJ Cinema in Eastgate, at that forum I committed to add an 18th platform point, which will have to do with drug dependency in our county, but I'd encourage you to check that out at hickswatchdog.com. Now, on a personal level, my wife is back here filming. I have a son who is in college. He's a sophomore at Miami. I went to Miami. My wife went to Miami. I like to joke with people that if my son graduates from Miami, we'll have the first time a multi-generational tradition in the Hicks family other than drinking beer. So I'm very excited about that. I want to thank These guys, I don't know if people are aware that the League of Women Voters instituted a new rule just this election, that if any one candidate would not appear in a debate, the entire a Q&A like this, the entire Q&A was canceled. That's why all the League of Women Voters events were canceled. So we talked and said, let's do it the same place, the same rules. I appreciate Jason helping out with it, because I truly believe people deserve to hear from the people seeking office and the people in office. So hopefully you'll learn more about me. You'll check out hickswatchdog.com. Hopefully you see some of my billboards, or some mail pieces are going to come out. But check out my 17-point platform that I think can really move our county forward. So thank you.
Thank you. That's a great point. This is a Q&A, not a debate, not your traditional forum, but questions from you, the audience, that will be asked of each candidate. And I have a few also just some general questions as well that I may just fill in here. These are great questions. I want to jump right to the audience questions. I think that's the most important thing you want to hear from them. There's so many great questions here. I'm trying to figure out which one to go with. I'll go with police protection as the first topic. And since he's the middleman, and probably we're always going to start on the ends, and he's first alphabetically, we'll start with Mr. Becker, and then we'll go from there. And the question is, this is directed to Mr. Becker and Mr. Hicks. So, but is it okay then if someone who's not mentioned on here can also answer or weigh in?
Let's have a vote, guys.
Roast them all.
Great question here. Where no township police exist, and with the elimination of some cities such as Newtonville and Amelia, will there be any increase or change in county police coverage? Mr. Becker.
Sure. Yeah, so that's a great question. That gets into priorities. And public safety is my top priority for the county. That's because when it gets into the sheriff, whatever the sheriff needs, if the sheriff needs additional staff or funding to cover additional areas, I'm certainly open to that. It includes the courts or the jails, whatever they need down there. So different townships, of course, you get some townships have their own police departments, and that's fine. Others contract through the sheriff. Well, some of those police departments decide, or some of the townships may decide they don't want to have their own police department anymore. Or you get, for example, Amelia and Newtonsville that suddenly vanished. Then the sheriff would need to step up and cover those. So if he needs additional resources to do that, since public safety is a top priority for me, then he can count on my vote to make that happen.
Thank you. Mr. Hicks.
Well, I think that, I was heavily involved with the dissolution of Endorsed, and I'm very proud of it. We are very over-governed. In Clermont County alone, there's over 200 elected offices, just in Clermont County, because we have all these 4 people per township, 5 people per school board, 7 people per village. It adds up quickly. And a lot of these small police forces that are under 10 people, I would say, would be the criteria I would use, tend to not be to be honest, not the best trained, equipped, and qualified people. And it's very controversial to say that, but I said it, and I'll say it every time. When I call 911, I want to make sure the person that's coming to my door is properly trained, they're properly equipped, and they're fully backed up. I think the sheriff does an excellent job with that. I think that you have some big townships that have critical mass police forces and unique policing issues, like Miami Township and Union Township, where you have more urban issues. But I look forward to the sheriff becoming more the police force for the county outside the larger townships. I think it'll be a much better scenario. I think it'll be better for Amelia, it'll be better for Newtonsville, and it will really move us forward. I think in the next couple of years, there's really going to need to be some thought into the sheriff's strategy, and I look forward to working. I think Steve Leahy is the most ethical, honest politician that I'm aware of in Clermont County. And I think at some point, we probably should be looking at moving from the sheriff's office being just in Batavia to a north, central, south. satellite view of the sheriff's office so that there can be better, more adequate coverage. I don't know that people are aware that some of the outlying townships, like Washington Township, have to contract separately for police to have quicker response times. I think I'd want to work with the sheriff to make sure that there's a consistent response time across our whole county. Just because you live towards the fringe doesn't mean your response time should be 4 or 5 times what it is today. So I don't know if I fully answered the question, but it's something that I've talked with the sheriff a lot and the chief deputy a lot, and I think there's a lot of things we can do that are going to be important to do in the next 4 years to advance policing in Clermont County.
Thank you. Mr. McGraw, would you like to
Sure.
weigh in on this?
As a father of 4 kids, I don't consider myself a typical politician. I didn't get into this just to be a politician. I did this for my kids. And I was concerned when they were younger. I heard, horror stories about some of the schools with drug problems and things like that. And I felt like we needed a better look at these types of things. So being a Union Township trustee, we're very fortunate. We've got a very large police force in Union Township. And we have a very good department. These guys are the best. They really are. And I'm really proud of them. Sheriff Leahy is a great person. I think really this question goes out to him because as sheriff, this is something he's going to have to decide. But I sat in a township meeting in Tate Township, and they debated, should they pay for junk days to make sure garbage gets thrown away, or should they pay to have a sheriff help patrol their township? And I thought, that's a terrible choice to have to make. You don't want mattresses on the side of the road. But they opted to go with the trash day. So they opted away from getting more sheriff's response. So the first thing I would do is the county takes half of the local government fund. I think some of the candidates have discussed this, and I hope we're all in favor of putting that money towards the local governments. The county shouldn't take half the money. If Tate Township could have another $10,000, they could have another officer for more hours, and that would be a big help to them. I think outsourcing your police force to the sheriff is a good idea. Batavia Township has great success with it. Over in Hamilton County, a lot of townships like Anderson Township do that. A place like New Richmond should consider that to get better police coverage. But one thing we have in this county that's very good is mutual aid. All of our police officers in Union Township participate on like the emergency response teams, the SWAT teams, the fire departments. We have great fire chiefs in this county. They all work together. Being a trustee, I've been fortunate to see up close how these departments work together, and I'm really impressed with the mutual aid that goes on in this county. So the Union Township Police will help out Pierce Township if they need it. So it's a great thing to have.
Thank you. Let's stay with you, Mr. McGraw. And the next question, the topic is economic development. And I thought, we said like a minute per answer. I think with fewer candidates here, maybe we can expand to a minute and a half, maybe a few minutes. So I'll just start kind of timing it. Topic is economic development, and this is for this question is for all commissioners, commissioner candidates. What will you do specifically to bring jobs and economic opportunities to Clermont County? Mr. McGraw.
Okay, well, that's a great question, and you make a good point. I wish the other candidates were here to help answer some of these questions, because the first thing that's most important is being responsive and being willing to face the residents. But sometimes it's very difficult, especially on a controversial issue. So I think I'm glad these guys came here tonight. I know they'll do a good job answering questions. Economic development, Union Township, I've been told we have too much economic development. When I ran for office, we had empty stores. We had empty shopping centers. We had vacant lots. We had a lot of houses that were vacant because of the housing crash. And I said, I'm going to work really hard to fill up these storefronts. I'm going to work really hard to get the houses filled because there was vacant property. I would go door to door. Every street had 3 houses that were vacant and had like weeds growing up over the windows. So we've had a great success. We're now the number 2 housing market in this greater Cincinnati area. Westchester is the only one ahead of us. We've had, since I've been in office, over $300 million in economic development. We've got 5 big projects going on right now. We've got TQL bringing 1,000 new jobs in. We've got Mercy Health just finished their building. Sherifax is building a new headquarters. We have a lot of things going on. So I want to help share that economic development where it's needed. When you go to Owensville, you got to close down IGA. You go to Felicity, they got to close down IGA. They just announced Park National Bank is closing in New Richmond. They closed the Frisch's in New Richmond. These little towns need economic development. They need some more money. You go to the houses in Williamsburg, some nice historic homes that are unfortunately falling apart because people can't afford to keep the houses the way they should be. The same in Bethel, Felicity, New Richmond. All these towns need help. At the same time, we have farmland and we have pasture land that people don't want developed. I'm perfectly good with that. I have no problem with Union Township, Miami Township being the economic engines of the county, supplying the sales tax and the money that's needed. But at the same time, you have to respect parts of the county that want to stay rural and stay the way they are.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw. We'll go right down the line to Mr. Becker. I'll read the question again. What will you do specifically to bring jobs and economic opportunities to Clermont County?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a believer in economic development as well. I mean, Clermont County has a nice balance of industrial, commercial, retail, residential, and rural. And, I don't want to disrupt that balance a whole lot because people move to Clermont County for different reasons. A lot of people like the rural settings, and I get that. And they moved out of Hamilton County or someplace to have that lifestyle, and that's wonderful. I think, however, like a north-south highway that's either going through Clermont County or Brown County, we talked about that bypass out of northern Kentucky. I don't know if that's ever going to happen or not. I could say I support that conceptually. I think that would be awesome for economic development. Now, the exact route that it's going to go, I don't know. And I don't know that I would support the specific route, so it just depends. In terms of creating the environment that companies, businesses are going to want to move here, relocate, and create jobs, yes, I am certainly open to working with them to create that atmosphere that they need to find Clermont County attractive.
Thank you. Mr. Hicks?
So I wrote down here, the first thing I do is quit doing dumb stuff. So we do a lot of dumb stuff at the county level right now. South Afton is a pit of money that will never, ever, ever make a dime. There's $9 million in the ground there. I'm aware that there was a tenant that was looked at it, they backed out, they would have required $2 million more, so $11 million. Currently there's about, if I read the press things, there's 85 jobs there. If you multiply it out for the same capacity of jobs that whole site was developed, it'd be under 500 jobs, and we were promised almost 2,000 in 2016 there. We got to quit doing dumb stuff and speculating with the taxpayers' money into pet projects that were it's famous that David Ubel said at the time the county did it because no private developer would do it. And there was a reason for that. I put FC Cincinnati, I'm hoping we could renegotiate the FC Cincinnati deal. It gets to get renewed every year the way they set it up to make it more productive for them in the county. But 24 million in incentives, 3 years of negotiating, it's a lot of effort. It eats up effort that you can't get back on deals that don't mean much. By the way, I think the most important things to economic development is that government does well the things that it can do, and it helps to facilitate the things that matter. And I wrote down a list. Housing. New Richmond's issue is housing. If there's not good middle and upper class housing in New Richmond's not going to pop. You can open up the Frisch's again or not, or go out of business again. Internet. Too many parts of our county don't have internet service. Too many parts of our county don't have cell phone service. Believe me, I'm a cheapskate and I have T-Mobile and I learn about it every time I drive different parts of our county. Health. That there's health services. It's great the new hospital opening up in Union Township. Safety. Sewer and water, roads, and schools. I said that for Tricia back there. Those are all important to making us attractive for business and attractive for people to live here. I have a vision that I think that we should look at our county as a western part that's highly developed, a central part that's more housing, and in the middle, and an eastern part that's more rural. And that could be fantastic. My dad I grew up in Bethel, and he drove to Cincinnati, but now we can drive to the western part of Clermont County and have jobs, and then kind of stage it out from there. Sorry, Jason.
You're good. Thank you. Let's stick, you mentioned transportation, a couple of transportation-related questions here, transportation infrastructure related. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and, most of these do say all the candidates. I think we should just go ahead and, everybody agrees, we can just have all the candidates answer. This is related, in rural areas, what are your priorities to develop infrastructure to support growth? rural areas. Let's start with Mr. Hicks.
Okay. I think that we need to have a much more aggressive plan for expanding the sewer and water infrastructure for Clermont County. I don't think we have one today. I think we have a pay-as-you-go, and we should be looking at rings of the county coming out from the west and having more of an aggressive plan for doing that, to expand that, because some of those rural areas, they could be very attractive for people, but those people might need internet, and they might want sewer and water versus septic in them. I'm friends with Chip Hart, who used to be the biggest show person in Cincinnati, and he's really turned me on to the idea of field-to-table farming, micro-farming, and 5 and 10 acre farms as being something that could be very important to the redevelopment of these rural communities and the villages. If you go into looking at these villages, when you get up in Clermont County, a lot of them are very dilapidated states right now, and if we could figure out a way, if I could take the $24 million that went into FC Cincinnati and put $24 million of incentives into micro and field-to-table farming for people who would redevelop old properties within those villages, I think I'd do that all day long. We got to take care of those places, and we haven't done anything in our county to really facilitate the redevelopment of those areas in the rural communities. But by the way, all that comes with also the road infrastructure needs to be solid within those, and the safety services need to be solid as well.
Just go right down the line, Mr. Becker.
Sure. Repeat the question again, please.
In the rural areas, what are your priorities to develop infrastructure to support the growth?
Sure. Yeah, I've always been a believer in highways, for one thing. You know, obviously they cost money, so it depends on how we're going to pay for them. And by the way, when I was talking about the Eastern Bypass, or whatever it's called, there's a, well, anyway, it's the one that goes out of northern Kentucky, supposedly through
Eastern Bypass.
Is that what it's called, Eastern Bypass? There's another one called something else.
Eastern Corridor.
Eastern Corridor. It's easy to get these confused. Anyway, just to be clear which one I was talking about. You know, so now there are questions, you know, how do you fund this? For that particular highway, I'd be open to a toll. And the reason I say that is it's a user fee. And, you know, people who don't want to pay the full toll, I get that, don't use the highway. So, you know, if that's what it takes to build it, I'm certainly open to that. But to get more specifically the question about the rural areas and economic development, yeah, I definitely like highways where it makes sense to invest the money. Also, where it comes to water and sewer, obviously there's a lot of expense to that. Something I have found from working with constituents is they don't like having anything shoved down their throats. So what I mean by that is, you know, sometimes they get notices where they are required, homeowners are required to pay, you know, X number of dollars for a sewer system they don't want. And the reason they don't want it is because they have a septic tank or whatever type of system they have, it's working just fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but they're being required. Sometimes it's an EPA requirement, sometimes the county's doing this, sometimes townships or municipalities are doing it, and then they're required to pay for all this. And they don't like that, and I don't want to be forcing that down their throats either.
Thank you. Mr. McGraw?
Well, I'll first give an example right in Union Township. You mentioned the Eastern Corridor project. Just to the west of us, Newtown, Marymount, they didn't want it. So they have a 2-lane road that's bottlenecked. Union Township, we said, we want the money for expanding our roads. So Route 32 is getting a lot of work done to it, and there's more to come. The next step will be Buxton Road interchange. We've got some track funding, and by participation between Clermont County and Union Township, we were able to secure those funds. We beat out the Western Hills Viaduct for those funds. So it's going to make a big difference. One thing I wouldn't do is build roundabouts in New Richmond. That's on the table right now. I would rather build condos that have a riverfront view in New Richmond. I would like the Delta Queen to pull up to a nice port, and New Richmond could be a great little destination for tourism. But you got to have, and people say, well, John, it floods down there. You can't build condos down there. What about Eastern Avenue in Cincinnati? There's condos up and down Eastern Avenue, right on the Ohio River. So I reject that argument. It can be done, and that's one thing I would do. And I agree with Chris. Internet. How can it be 2020 and people don't have internet? I mean, you think of like maybe India or someplace in Africa that doesn't have internet. United States, we should have internet. And with the 5th generation cell phones and cell towers coming out, it's time to help the entire county have internet. So I think that's a very important thing to look at.
Thank you. This comes from my list. I think it dovetails nice after the Eastern Bypass has been referenced. recently, the Ohio Department of Transportation came out and said they're done, they're not going to study this project anymore. I know some of you established whether you were for or against it. Can you re-establish, hey, were you for or against it? And, you know, what now? Would you like to see this resurrected? Or would you like to see another idea come up about a bypass highway in that similar area? And just to let the listeners, the audience know that the Eastern Bypass is a 67-mile idea. It was really put forth by
Fisher Homes.
Yeah, Fisher Homes, Northern Kentucky, some Northern Kentucky business leaders, to basically connect from Crittenden at 75 near Crittenden, and come up around Campbell County all the way up to Clermont County, and then snake back over and hit 75 back in Warren County to Springboro. And Kentucky spent $2 million on a study, and the Ohio Department of Transportation just came out and said, we've looked at this, and it showed like 10% of traffic would divert from the Brent Spence Bridge, and I'm paraphrasing, the state basically said, we don't think this is worth looking at anymore. But it was going to cut a lot through Clermont County, so I think it's an important issue. Let's jump back to Mr. Becker and have you first tackle that one.
Yeah, actually, I got a meeting on my calendar in a couple of weeks, and so it's in Northern Kentucky, and it's on this topic. And I was looking at some maps of what they're proposing over there, and they got actually some very different ideas or some different concepts that they have penciled in in order to potentially build some highways. You know, one I think would go to Foster, that's out by Melville Dam, and another one was in the California area of California, Kentucky. I think that's the one closer to New Richmond. So if they wind up building a highway, you know, they don't necessarily need anything from Ohio, but it would put more pressure on Ohio to you know, connect to it as well, instead of just having a bridge to nowhere. So, you know, Kentucky they've been leading on this all along, and maybe that's the way it's going to continue, at least for the near future. It looks like that's the way it's going to continue. So, so in terms of what is Ohio going to do? So Ohio Department of Transportation, you know, they sent out something that they didn't, you know, it was negative. However, we did put something in the current transportation budget that funds them to continue to look at this. So the project is not dead. I'd say on the Ohio side of the river, it is on life support. Frankly, you know, I think if this thing gets built, it won't be in the next 10 years. My guess is it never will be. At least not in my lifetime, but I don't know, and I'm just guessing. So the bypass, I had another thought, but I lost it. That's all right.
Oh, let's jump to Mr. McGraw on this. It's, you know, knowing what we said about the bypass. Were you for or against it? And is there anything you would like to be seen now presented in lieu of it being on life support, at least certainly on this side of the river?
Okay, I can clearly say I was against it, because it was a highway to nowhere, and it didn't make any sense. And not to insult anybody in this room, but we're all going to be dead before that highway would even start construction. So people who are really wanting this, that's not going to happen in your lifetime, even if it does happen. One piece of it that I would be okay with is a bridge connecting to Kentucky in the New Richmond area. I think that would make sense because there's a lot of housing development over in northern Kentucky that could definitely make sense to connect to Route 52. But we can't even build a Brent Spence Bridge. And I'm a regional person too. Clermont County is important to me, but so is the entire Cincinnati region. If we can't build a Brent Spence Bridge right now, I don't see how we're going to get a bridge in Clermont County. So I think the realistic thing is it's never going to happen anytime soon. So, and people say, well, it would have brought all kinds of development. I'm not really sure about that. If you go up I-71 just to exit 50, not that far away, you got R&L carriers, McDonald's, and the Dairy Queen. So just because there's a highway doesn't guarantee you're going to have all kinds of development. And I'm not sure people out there wanted all kinds of development. The people I meet out in that part of the county, in Brown County, they like the rural atmosphere. That's why they moved out there. So I just don't think financially it made sense. The bridge I would like to have, but I'm a realist that it's going to be very difficult to get a bridge.
Thank you. Mr. Hicks?
I pretty much agree with what John McGraw just said. I think it's a distraction, and I'm generally disgusted by the lack of, I'm a drain the swampish type of guy. I'm disgusted by the lack of political leadership in our region when we had the Speaker of the House and the head of the Senate, and we don't get a Brent Spence Bridge project. The idea that that's not a priority, and I'm generally disgusted on our inability in our region to complete projects like the Cross County Highway. The Cross County Highway never got completed from when I was a kid because the moneyed interest in Indian Hill didn't want it to go through. And we got to focus on the things that we should have completed before we sell the taxpayers another pipe dream that some big highway is going to go through. I think the biggest beneficiaries of a highway out in that area would be people that bought the land out there in advance for the highway going through. So I was not a fan of it. I think in Clermont County, we need to be all hands on deck focusing on our east-west routes, 32, 28, 50, 52. John mentioned that the notion that there's a proposal that Commissioner Painter was behind to reduce the capacity of 52 and put roundabouts in for semis to drive through roundabouts is the dumbest thing I ever heard. So, we don't need to reduce capacity on our east-west routes. We need to increase and streamline that capacity. It's happening some on 32, but it's going to be trouble just to keep up with it. And the other key routes, 28, 125, 50, 52, that's where we should be focusing. That's where it's important for our people. But I do also agree that a small bridge in the New Richmond area, if you're ever in New Richmond, you try to get the other side of the river, which I did to film Becker, it's a huge pain to get it. So there should be a bridge there. So maybe we'll bring back Bob McEwen as a consultant because he brags that he got 5 bridges built when he was in the Congress. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Sticking with transportation, but going in a completely different direction. This is a great question here. We'll start with Mr. McGraw on this time. Why does the airport one-way need expanding? What is the cost? Is there a demand for expansion? And where would the funding come from?
I assume we're talking about the Clermont County Airport.
Yes.
There was talk about it, if the runway gets expanded, that you could have some regional jet service could actually land, or more corporate jets could be housed there. And I'm all for that. I think regional airports are a really viable thing right now. You look at Markins kind of have a renaissance of new business there because of the regional airlines. They can get there. You can get a quick flight to Chicago or New York or wherever. So I think there's some benefit to that. The land it's onto is difficult because I believe they're landlocked to a certain extent. To extend the runway is going to be difficult. You got Route 32 to the north of the airport, and I think it's going to be difficult to do that. My understanding that the project was kind of pushed along by the Sporty's pilot shop out there that wanted, the runway to be advanced. So I think the only way I would favor that is if there was a way to pay for it by the increased traffic that would come to the airport. I don't know that spending millions and millions of dollars of county funds to extend the runway would be beneficial if there's not going to be the traffic there to pay the landing fees to support it. So I think I would have to see a clear study where the traffic would increase to the point where it can pay for that runway. I think it's a difficult proposition when I look at the maps and see what I see. But it would be nice to have some regional service.
Representative Becker.
Sure. We did have money in the capital budget for expanding the runway for jet service at the Clermont County Airport. I love the idea of doing that. There was a lot, and I've been up with Sporty's, talked to them a couple of times out there, great people. There seems to be some finger pointing back and forth about who dropped the ball. Was it the FAA? Was it the county? I'm not sure. It was kind of one of these things like, once I'm a county commissioner, if they still want to move forward with this, if we can still get funding out of the state to help with this, then, I'm certainly willing to take a look at it at the time. Bottom line on the expansion of the airport, do I support? Yes, provided that's feasible and provided that, it passes the FAA criteria.
I think we have a unique arrangement with the airport where the county, it's on county land, but the county doesn't pay for it. And we've had this with Sporty's and Hal Seavers, for a long time, and it's been a great relationship. I think the runway, now, I'm never going to do something as a commissioner that doesn't make economic sense ultimately, but I have this on my platform as one of the things that we should do. The commissioners already approved doing it. What happened, I think, more than anything, is they got distracted by other donor projects that they wanted to spend their time on. Remember, we found $24 million of incentives for FC Cincinnati, but we couldn't figure out how to get the runway expanded at the airport. I think it would be a strategic asset for businesses located in this area. It's a 1,400-foot expansion, just not for like we're going to land 747s or something, just bigger business jets could land there. So I investigated it. The FAA originally turned down the request, but then I learned that what happens is they always turn them down because the road topology there, and you have to go for a waiver. It's the normal thing, okay, because the traffic on the roads isn't big enough to actually cause you to have to dig tunnels and stuff like this there. So that I've investigated and found that it would actually be very easy to get it approved by the FAA but you have to do the second filing to request it. I would absolutely support it. I don't know how much it costs when people say millions or what. I don't know what it costs, but I think it would be very attractive if, heck, for FC Cincinnati too, if players or other people could fly into that airport and land, businesses like TQL, it would be a real asset. And I think, I know some pilots myself, and I know we could steal some pilots away from Lunken. And not just jet pilots. I'm gonna tell you one other secret thing about this. People that fly planes that can land at Clermont County Airport are nervous sometimes about landing there because of the short runway. So even though it's qualified that they can land their plane on the runway, they like it. I know if I was a pilot, I'd want a longer runway. I'd like more turnaround space in my driveway. So it causes people to be afraid to locate there. So I think it's absolutely something we should do, and absolutely something we could find the money for, probably within Clermont County, or the capital budget.
Thank you. Let's have a little fun with this one. If elected, what is your number one priority that you would tackle on your first day in office? Not numbers 1, 2, 3, and 10, but your number one priority. And let's start with Mr. Hicks.
You had me at number one priority, then you said day one, and then it was like, number one priority on day one, get a key card for the building. So,
sorry, I should have.
Does anybody,
You would take that literally, yes.
I appreciate that John McGraw brought all his kids and put them in the back room behind us, but it's just I'm joking. Yeah, that's a joke. It's a joke.
It's
so
elected.
So I think first thing I would do is, if I elected, the first thing I do is I want to put county employees at ease if I got elected, because I think they'd be scared to death. The ones that had, I actually think I had a lot of county employees that come to me, and I think they're ready. They're ready for us to move towards a merit-based system, and I want to reassure people on day one that we are going to move towards a system of integrity, a merit-based system, that there's going to be a whistleblower reporting mechanism for fraud, waste, and abuse taking place in our government, and that we're going to get people in the offices that deserve to be there that can give the best value to our citizens. So that's really my first priority, is to start changing the culture, to start changing that culture there. And on day one, the good news is if I win the primary, they're going to get a lot of time to think about it. I hope there's no record shredding or destruction, but they're going to have a lot of time to think about it before the November election.
Thank you, Mr. Becker.
Yeah, I'm not sure you're going to find a lot of dissension up here on this topic. But yeah, I mean, we all have multiple priorities, and probably either at the top or near the top is going to be the issue of corruption. There's been so much of it in the county, inside the Clermont County Republican Party, that comes ethics, integrity, and anti-corruption. That's going to be probably the number one thing that I start. That doesn't mean there's going to be a witch hunt, but it does mean that there's going to be a watchdog, and not to be stealing your thunder. Poor choice of words on my part. Let's just say a new commissioner with the eye for looking for these kind of things, that should they come to my attention, and I would certainly want people to bring them to my attention, that they will be investigated. And whether it's an ethics thing to be handled internally, or whether it's something that's a legal thing that can be handled externally by the county prosecutor or the FBI, depending on the severity of it. If perhaps we need ombudsmen in the county to be doing that sort of thing. I hate the idea of creating more government jobs, but maybe that is necessary. Maybe we eliminate one to create that one, or maybe better, eliminate two to create that one. So that's the kind of stuff I'll just have to cross that bridge when I get to it.
Mr. McGraw.
When I first got elected as a trustee, I think a lot of employees thought I was going to come in and fire a bunch of people, and that just wasn't true. I believe in the core employees of the government, but day one, the most important thing is going to be the corruption. You've got to have a whistleblower program like Chris just mentioned. We have to have audits of all the departments. There's been rumors over the years like certain people don't show up for work, and you can't really prove that one way or another. And that's not necessarily what I'm talking about at the moment. But what I am talking about is we had a water department employee steal money on a credit card. We had a water contractor, their employee was doing the same thing. And we had a county engineer have to step down due to corruption. We've had 2 county commissioners have to step down due to corruption. And it goes on and on. Our permit central, same thing. It was a pay-to-play kind of thing, and they were using the system to gain from it. Those kind of things have to stop. There's been rumors of improper employee and management situations. That stuff's got to stop. So day one, it's going to be corruption, it's going to be whistleblower, and audits for these departments.
Thank you. I think that dovetails nicely into our next audience question, and that is the topic of transparency. What will you do to make government in Clermont County more transparent? What will you do to make government in Clermont County more transparent? We'll start with you, Mr. McGraw.
Okay, this is a topic where it's not really hard to test me on. You can go to the Union Township website and see how we treat transparency. Our meetings are all videotaped. You can watch any meeting. We put them on Facebook, so you can watch them at 11 o'clock at night at your home. So you can see all our meetings. All our documents are online. Our agendas, our resolutions. All these things are online so you can access them easily and quickly. So we've actually cut down on how many people come in and make records requests because most of the stuff you can get online and just print it off yourself. And I think those kind of things are so important. Less executive sessions. A lot of local governments love to have executive sessions where who knows what they go discuss. Union Township, we have very few executive sessions, and usually they're very short if we do have one. So I think keeping things out in the open, being as transparent as possible. And transparency is also, when someone sends you an email, you answer them. And it's not always an answer with an email. A lot of times you follow up with a phone call or go to their house and talk to them in person. I like meeting people in person. So transparency is not just having documents and videos and things like that. It's being open and talking to people personally. A lot of people, some people dodge questions, and I'm not going to dodge any questions. I might not give you the answer you like, but I'm going to give you an answer.
Thank you, Representative Becker.
Sure. Well, first off, like Union Township, Clermont County is pretty transparent now. The checkbook is online, and you can get a lot of information online. The commissioners' meetings are also online, so you can be watching that stuff. So what I think of in terms of this would be like a constituent service issue. When constituents call my office, they're looking for information. Maybe it's a public record of some sort. I'm on top of that. My staff knows, just make it happen right away. Get anybody anything they want. Get them plugged into the right agency. So if it's a public records request, also it depends on the nature of the request. Is it a public record? Well, at the state level, I got a pretty good handle on what that means and what that is. At the county level, I'd have to consult with the legal staff down there to find out what do I have the authority to release that's not currently out on the website or something that is publicly accessible. So I can tell you this, to the extent where I have the authority to release information, I will.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
I'm not on board with the county being that transparent. And the difference is, and I want to have a compliment to John McGraw, he's a trustee in Union Township. If I ask him for a record and he has it on his computer, he just emails it to me. Right? I don't have to go fill it out. I think I got that on my computer, I get to send it to you. And so I think that's the kind of spirit that should be there, not that how you have to format a request and lawyers look at it. I think one of the things that's part of my platform is live streaming the county meetings. Is live streaming, like the Clermont Sun is live streaming this. I think that's overdue as well. I want to mention just 2 other things. I'm Mr. Transparency. A lot of things have happened because of me in this county, but one thing is I would absolutely institute commissioner work sessions So I don't know if people are aware there's meetings. Commissioners, because there's only 3 of them, let's say we were all the commissioners, they're legally, they can't, 2 of them talking together at a prearranged meeting is illegal. So it makes it hard to collaborate. And so one of the ways you deal with that is you do have work sessions, which are not business sessions, but saying like, let's say we were all commissioners, we're just gonna get together from 2 to 5. Anybody that wants to come in the room and listen to us talk can do so. I think we should do that at the commissioner level to allow that free and frank discussion to take place. I never have anything to hide on this stuff. Second thing is, the Ohio Online Checkbook is a great tool. Now, the county has not updated in it since 2014. And, but that's not the key point, is I play with it some, and it has some really cool features in there. Like you can take a view and you can say post it to my Facebook of a view you're looking at right then. I looked into that company that makes that. It's a software company called OpenGov. And what's it going to do to the county? Not a lot. I just want to give a quick example. OpenGov, if you go find a government institution that uses OpenGov throughout their entity, it goes to a model like you could Google your government. It totally flips the axis of the mental picture. Everything's online. You don't have to make requests. Google your government at any time. And so that's the kind of spirit. We got a long way to get there in Clermont County, but that's the kind of thing I want to become known as a leader in terms of government that's responsive and it has records and data accessible to its people and constituents.
Thank you. Before I jump to this next one, I think it's important to reiterate, we have 2 different commissioner races here this evening. One is for Ed Humphreys, open seat as he retires, and running for that seat is John McGraw, John Becker, and Bonnie Batchler. And then running in for another commissioner seat is incumbent David Painter and Chris Hicks. And so with that, given that you are all in the same party, Republican Party, what differentiates you from the other candidates, or in your case, Mr. Hicks, candidate? Let's start with, I'm not sure where we were at in this, but let's start with Mr. McGraw.
Okay. So, first of all, you're right. There's 3 Republicans running. There's no Democrat in this race. So this race will be decided at the March primary. So if you don't vote in the Republican primary for this election, you have no say in your local government. So I'm just saying it's very important to consider the candidates. First of all, I think we have 3 very good candidates. Bonnie Batchler is a nice person. She's not here tonight. I get along with her very well. She's a township trustee in Pierce Township. Mr. Becker has been our state rep for a while, been helpful on projects with Union Township. We get along pretty good. What makes me different, and I'm not going to say what makes them different from me, but I'll just say how I believe I'm different, is my local government experience with a big government. I mean, Union Township is similar in size to the size of the county government. We have 60 police officers. We have over 50 firefighters. We have a service department. We have our own 911 call center. So we have a pretty big government already in our township because we have a lot of the population. It makes sense. So I have experience in that. I believe that my opponents have less experience in that. So I think it helps me to understand how to run a big organization like that and have good teamwork and have high quality service. I am very proud of the services we provide in Union Township. That's what I want to extend to the county level. Now the county is a little bit different because you have elected officials in charge of a lot of the departments. You got a treasurer and clerk of courts and things like that. But the commissioners set the budget, they set the tone, and they're the cheerleaders for the whole county. To get, we're competing against a $1 billion Amazon project going on at the Greater Cincinnati Airport. We're competing against Westchester. We're competing against Harrison, Ohio, Mason, Ohio, for projects and things. And you have to be able to talk to the press. You have to be able to talk to the people in the know in the region to get your county out there to get projects to come to you, and people trust you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGraw. Go to Representative Becker.
Sure. Yeah, what would differentiate me, it's actually a number of things. You know, I've got the track record of being the most conservative, or one of the most conservative legislators in the state of Ohio. I think it's a safe bet that I'd be among the most conservative commissioners in the history of Clermont County. You know, I got the resume that has the budgeting and finance experience, 30 years in the private sector, but specifically Provident Bank. It was about 8 years of doing it, like I just said earlier, 8 years of corporate corporate level, overall budgeting and planning, rolling up from all of the agencies. That's something I have a lot of specific experience with in budgeting and planning and finances. That's the most important role of being a commissioner, funding the agencies and managing the county budget. Also, I'm the only one up here, or of any of the list of candidates that has an advanced degree. I have an MBA from Xavier University with an emphasis in taxation. So just to close all of that, to sum that up, I am the candidate who is vetted, tested, and proven.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
I think within the political system, what differentiates me is I am relentlessly transforming the political system within Clermont County. And you see it by just the proposals and ideas that people are talking about at this point. It's amazing how in the political party where we've always had a corrupt endorsement process, how many people now are talking about getting rid of that process that you never would have thought that they would have talked about getting rid of it. We're in the process of a transformation, and I went 3 years ago to my wife, when John Becker drafted me to be on the Central Committee, one of the worst mistakes of his life. I told my wife, and she could testify, that there's 205,000 people in Clermont County. I'm one, and it's time that one person that has the means to do it, I can't do it forever, okay, but has the means to really try to change the culture, while we're still a very conservative red culture. And one of the things as a consultant I find is companies wait too long to transform, and they lose control. By the time they realize they need to transform, it's too late. We can transform now, and I think I'm the driving force behind the transformation that's taking place. And I think a lot of the ideas we're seeing and the stuff we're seeing going forward, I welcome. I wrote down here, I love the Martin Luther King line, we all came by different ships, but we're in the same boat now. And I'm glad to see even John Becker reporting on corruption, John McGraw talking about corruption, that these things are coming front and center. People are talking about them in public, and we can really move the party and the system forward. And I think it differentiates me is that I'm already proven doing that for 3+ years.
Thank you. Next audience question, I was going to say who it comes from, but these are all anonymous. So, the next question is, what is your view on career politicians, and if you're not elected, what will you go do? What will you do? Let's start with Mr. Becker.
Well, none of us up here are career politicians. I've been called that in the past, and I kind of had to chuckle since I spent 30 years in the private sector and didn't get into politics actually until the early 90s when Bill Clinton got elected. That's when I concluded I needed to do more than just vote. So I didn't have an elected position where I was making any money. This is my first one as a state representative. So I got elected in 2012 and took office in 2013. The elected position I had before that was on the state central committee. So it's similar to the Clermont County Central Committee, the local party. It was a state Ohio Republican Party where I was on there. It was called the Central Committee. It's not a paid position. You're not in Oprah's or anything like that. It's all volunteer, and the expenses are out of your own pocket. So in terms of being a career politician, if I'm a career politician, it's a very late career because I was in my 50s when I got elected to the office that I currently have, so it's only 7 years ago. I'm hoping to, of course, go on to commissioner. I'm not sure after that. I could see doing seeing how it goes for the first term, maybe doing 2 or 3 terms and then retiring. Should it not work out, frankly, I don't see myself going back to the private sector. At least let me put it this way. I'm not going to be sending out resumes looking for a job. If one comes to me, I'll consider it, but I'm not going to be out looking for something. I may run for a different elected office somewhere in the future.
Thank you. Mr. McGraw.
Well, if I'm not elected commissioner, I would still be a trustee in Township, for now. But the reason I got involved in this to begin with, it wasn't to be a career politician. I wanted to see a better life for my kids. I started out on PTO. I was PTO secretary, but now, of course, I don't think anybody else wanted the job, so I got stuck. But the reason I got into the PTO to begin with was there was rumors, and I believe true, that people were stealing money out of the PTO. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. We're raising all this money to help our kids and some person's gonna like steal money out of the PTO. So myself and another group of concerned parents, we got into PTO right then and there to stop that. And we got a tax ID number for our PTO. We started having regular treasury reports that made sense and people could follow the money. So I think that was real important. And if I'm not elected to any office, being a trustee, I've learned you don't just go to the trustee meeting. There's lots of other meetings you need to go to. It's school board, it's the library board, it's all these other boards. I've gotten around a lot of meetings in this process, and you get to know people, you get to know what they need, and you can figure out ways to help people. I helped people before I ever got elected get things done. I helped get the school zone sign on Schoolhouse Road before I got elected because I thought it was important. I think these guys have also done similar things. Chris Hicks has done a lot of things without ever being elected. So I think every citizen and the residents in this room are some of the most concerned ones in our county, obviously. Everybody can have an impact whether you're elected official or not. So it's important to be engaged in your local government. It's important to go to the meetings.
Mr. Hicks?
I think from my consulting experience, I like to say that companies' usual biggest problems are not the employees that quit and leave. They're the employees that quit and stay. And so you asked the question originally about career politicians. I don't think it's about career politicians. I think it's about when people quit innovating, when people quit moving things forward. I don't care how long you've been in office, are you moving things forward? There was a time when I was pushing on, John Becker introduced a work act that would require county officials to be in their office more. It's ridiculous. They don't have to be in like once every 90 days or something. If they do their office duties of office, it's adequate. And I was pressing our politicians to answer questions about how many hours they spent in their office. The vast majority of them, including all the commissioners, none of them would answer the question. But one of them told me, as long as your office is running good, why do you need to go there? Because I tell you what, there's not a single daggone office in Clermont County that can't be more innovative, more dynamic, doing new things. And so I think that's the most important thing. So I think politicians that are not innovating and bringing new things need to get out of the way. I'll make one other statement. I love retirees. I love my mom, even though she questions me sometime on this, she's a retiree. But sometimes our older people who are on pensions and stuff from the government, they need to get out of the way. They need to let a new generation of leadership come in. They bitch and moan about the kids and the young people, but you got to let the kids and the young people start running the ship a little bit and transitioning versus hanging out forever. So to me, it's about innovation is the most important thing, not whether you're a career politician.
Thank you. Understanding that a commissioner doesn't set any education policy, at all, or have any say, directly with the schools, but there are things the commissioner, as leader of the county, can do to be sort of support the schools. So the next question, next audience question is: given strong public schools attract high-income families and business development, how do you plan to support and strengthen public schools in Clermont County? We'll start with Mr. Hicks on this.
Okay. Again, I'm betting this is a Tricia question.
Not for me.
It's not, that's
It's not me.
all right.
These are all anonymous.
Okay, so that's, no, I meant that in a positive way. I meant that in a positive way. So commissioners don't have a lot directly to do with education and the education funding system. On a policy level at our state, which our state reps should be dealing with, it is repugnant to me that House Bill 920, which is the thing that I won't go into detail, has not been repealed from 1976. It should have been repealed a long time ago. It's what causes your schools to constantly have to ask for more levies, because the money from levies deteriorates over time and has less spending power the way it works, not to go into detail. I think that in our county, this will be very controversial to say this, I think more schools should look at income taxes. This is an option for a school income tax. I know it's very unpopular, but we run around saying that the model of property tax for funding schools is unconstitutional, but at the same time, it's the only method we seem to bring forward to voters. I think it's very important for us to have strong education throughout our county to attract people, but also to have smart education within our county in terms of how we're spending our money, on education. I think ultimately there's some key state policy things that need to happen. in terms of how education is funded. I think at the local level, we need to look at how do we balance out the funding of education with the needs of the retired community that I think are increasingly getting taxed out of their homes by a system that it's not just education, but it's way too dependent on property tax as the means to fund way too many parts of our government at the county level.
Mr. Becker. Sure. I was getting confused. I'm like, that's right, you were the first one.
Yeah, so the question was regarding education for what the commissioner's involvement. So, you know, I could attack that question from a couple of different answers. Obviously, the state representative, where it's much more relevant, but to kind of focus for commissioner. What I do or have done for 7 years, I'm in my 8th year as a state representative, I attend a lot of meetings, whether village council meetings, city council, trustee meetings, commissioner meetings, school board meetings. I've been attending these meetings for 7 years, all over my house district. And then with running for commissioner, I'm kind of expanding out, of course, beyond my house district to some other areas of Clermont County. So with that, so it's a matter of, as a commissioner, as you're sitting in maybe a school board meeting or you're hearing people talking about different issues, so then you get some ideas and you can connect sometimes. Maybe I can put in a phone call to a superintendent and saying, hey, you know, you might want to consider this idea that's coming out of the school district over there, that sort of thing. So it's just a matter of listening, talking to people, gathering information, and sharing that information. I guess collaboration would be the word there. And that's the kind of stuff I've been doing as a state representative and would continue along those lines as a commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw.
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, obviously the commissioner's office is not involved in education, but there are things that a commissioner can do and a trustee can do. As a trustee in Union Township, we had a landmark, unprecedented deal where we worked with West Clermont Schools and with a TIF property at the Old Glen SD property. We are using the TIF money from that to fund a new, brand new high school. And that led to them getting state credits where they could build 2 elementary schools and renovate a 3rd. So there are innovative things that government can do to help out education. But also, it's so important for security. Our kids have to feel safe going to school. In some cases, the sheriff's office provides resource officers. We need to make sure every school that needs a resource officer has it. We got to work with the local boards of education to figure out what they need and provide the security that they need. In Union Township, we have 2 police officers at West Clermont High School. That's part of the deal with the Board of Education we have there. So I think security is very important. Good roads are important. Getting school buses there safely, making sure you get the salt down early enough so kids can go to school. They don't have to call off all the time. I think that's important. But the last thing I think is probably the most important thing is showing that you care. Now, I recently went to a Bethel Board of Education meeting, and everybody kept kind of looking like, who's that guy in the back of the room? They weren't really sure why I was there. So finally, they kind of asked me, and I introduced myself. And they were so thrilled to have a commissioner candidate show up at the Bethel School Board meeting. Like, you really, I mean, you guys care. That's really great. And I think sometimes it's just showing you care, even if you don't have an immediate answer or things you can help them with. And it goes true for the private schools, too. We have some great private schools like St. Andrew's Elementary over in Milford. Showing up at their church festivals, showing up at their events, being a cheerleader for them, for all the public schools and our private schools. I think you can be out in front, be a leader, and they really appreciate that. I mean, the schools really do appreciate you being involved and listening to them. Maybe there's a way you find out you can help them.
Thank you. Down to my final audience submitted question. I have a couple of questions on my list. I want to, if there's something you've heard here tonight and you'd like to submit another question, just fill out one of the cards and just bring it up here, something up here, and I'll be happy to ask it. This topic now is on the Second Amendment sanctuary. Do you support Clermont County becoming a Second Amendment sanctuary county? Let's start with Mr. Hicks.
Okay.
Are we?
I'm going first on the last one. So.
Yeah, it's Mr. Becker on this one.
Sure, I'll take it.
Sorry about that. I'll read that again. Do you support Clermont County becoming a Second Amendment sanctuary county?
Well, I'll just talk about that kind of generally. The concept of the Second Amendment, I'm a very strong believer in. And as I stated earlier, I have an A+ rating, which is a highly exclusive rating, one of the few candidates on the ballot in the state of Ohio that has an A+ rating for both the NRA and Buckeye Firearms. So I got those ratings for a reason. I'm a very strong believer in the Second Amendment. When it comes to the issue of counties or municipalities declaring themselves sanctuary, frankly, it scares me a little bit, but more than anything else, I just think it's frankly silly. It's the feel-good legislation. Hey, look, we declared ourselves a sanctuary county. Look how wonderful we are. We believe in the Second Amendment. Well, what does it mean to be a sanctuary county? Well, it doesn't mean anything, and that's the problem. It just means we voted that we like the Second Amendment. Well, good to know you like the Second Amendment, but so what did it change being a sanctuary county? Well, it doesn't change anything, and that's the problem. If the commissioners would say, there's been debate in the past about, should we allow should we allow concealed carry in the administration building? Well, currently open carry is allowed. Anybody legally allowed to own a firearm will walk right into a commissioner's meeting with an AR-15 strapped on their back or sidearm, perfectly legal, nothing you can do about it. If that same person has a concealed carry license and has a concealed firearm in his pocket, that's a felony. It could be the same guy. The AR-15 is not a problem. An old .22 pistol, that's a problem. That's a felony. That's something the commissioners could fix. That would be something constructive. Now, they can't allow firearms in a courthouse, for example. That's a state issue. We don't allow that at the state level. So, I guess the roundabout way to answer the question, let me put it this way. Being a sanctuary county is not a resolution I would put forward.
Thank you. Mr. McGraw?
Well, I'm not a believer in any kind of sanctuary, city or county or state of anything. We've got a U.S. Constitution. We have laws and rules. As a trustee, I had to raise my right hand and say I'll support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Ohio. Saying you're a sanctuary county or city or whatever it is, you're basically saying I'm not going to support that Constitution anymore. I'm going to do what I want to do. Now, had I been a commissioner at the time this was talked about, the first thing I would have done was anybody talk to the sheriff about this? I mean, he's the guy, he's the law enforcement guy. What is his opinion on this? And I don't think that was done. But I think it's a fool's errand because I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment. I'm a big believer in following the Constitution. If the state of Ohio has a great mechanism, you can put a constitutional amendment on the ballot where voters can actually vote on something. So I think the Second Amendment sanctuary came out of the red flag laws, possibly going through the state of Ohio. And if that's what you're most concerned about, don't waste time talking about sanctuary county. Get your petitions, write a bill that changes the Constitution to get the, whether it's red flag laws, whatever laws you're trying to change or prevent, do it the way that's already set up. And I think that would be a much better errand than making it. I think it was done in this county for a show vote for election time, and I think that's sad that that's where we're at.
Thank you.
I'm totally against the Second Amendment sanctuary concept. So in Virginia, there's a different scenario because a bunch of laws have come out of their legislature, but we have a Republican-dominated House, a Republican-dominated Senate, and supposedly a Republican governor, so I'm not sure at times. And so our issue in Ohio is totally different. I'm not sure what the law is that should be a sanctuary thing that we're not enforcing, because I don't think we have I'm informed that a good 30% of our laws in Ohio for bringing guns are to protect gun owners' rights. And so I think we need to have one set of laws in Ohio that are consistently enforced across all counties, because as soon as counties like ours that are very red start saying we're sanctuary, what's to keep Cuyahoga County from saying we're a different kind of sanctuary? We're not going to follow the preemption laws that protect people's right to carry in certain places. So I think it was a show vote, and I'm very proud of my involvement. If you watch the news reports at the time, because Dylan was there, and he knows I was the person fighting against this thing right then and there. And it passed here, and the movement kind of stalled out a lot after that. It's still there, but it's really stalled out because people woke up And the major gun advocacy groups in the state are against this sanctuary concept because, and one other thing, just real quick, I want to make everybody understand. Commissioners do not pass laws. They do not make ordinances. Village councils do that. Legislators do that, but that's why commissioners are a small group of people. They basically run the operations and the finances. They don't make laws. Township trustees don't make laws. So the whole notion is a joke because they don't make any laws, nor do they control how laws are enforced. The sheriff is a separately elected official, and our sheriff's great. He enforces the laws, and there's obviously discretion as to how he deploys his manpower, but we never want to put any, especially a peer elected official, in a position where it seems like they're implying that the laws aren't going to be enforced. And I know I'm probably on my time, but Steve Leahy told me, for example, that once that happened, he had to pull people to write policy stuff for phone calls they were getting, wanting to know, is now Clermont County a constitutional carry where I can have a concealed weapon without a permit? Is now, so he's like, all of a sudden, because of this thing, people assume that we're not enforcing any gun laws anymore. So people are calling in, and that is just ridiculous. And I know for a fact, he said it in the Enquirer, Sheriff Leahy was not consulted on it, which is just reprehensible. I don't think any of us would do anything that involved law enforcement without consulting with law enforcement. Not just the sheriff, but also with the major township police forces that have to deal with the repercussions of what the commissioners may say.
Thank you. I have a couple questions from my list here. One of which has been a big issue in Clermont County in the past year, and certainly have in the past election, were the dissolving of Amelia and Newtonsville. What is your take, what's your stance on that, the dissolving of both of those villages? And then also, would you favor future dissolvements of municipalities in the county? It's to your turn, Mr. McGraw, so we'll start with you on that.
Okay. I really believe this is a local decision because a village gets created or a city gets created because people have common problems, common things that they want to work together on, and they decide to pay taxes and set up a government to achieve those things. Now, having said that, we've got Amelia, who decided we don't need that anymore. And I applaud them because they voted on it. It was a fair decision, and they're moving on from that. Now, there's a lot of complications in dividing it up, but they'll work that out eventually. Places that concern me, though, we have a little town called Shiloh and Neville. And if you don't know Clermont County very well, you have to drive around a lot to find these towns, but they're out there. They can't even get people to run for elected office. So, and they're at the point where I don't think they have the money to dissolve, even if they wanted to. So I think that's something where the state and even the county government can help these smaller villages go ahead and dissolve. It would make sense for those two right away to dissolve. Now, you can get into discussions about Batavia and Owensville and Bethel, and to me, I think it gets back to what those local residents in those villages want to do. But there's a big expense into running a local government, and I know very well from running Union Township. So these villages don't have the money. They're all strapped for cash. And in some cases, they don't take care of the water department they're supposed to be running. So I think they need to take a hard look at their own situation and decide, would it be better to be part of Stone Lake Township in Owensville, or part of Batavia Township, whichever it is, or what are we going to do with our future? But I think you can easily start with Neville and Shiloh. Let's get those done.
Representative Becker.
Sure. So to begin with, I support the decision, the will of the people. They voted to eliminate both of those villages, Newtonsville and Amelia, and God bless them, I'm fine with that. The problem we've had with a lot of villages around the state is mayor's courts, and both Amelia and Newtonsville has that issue or had past tense, and you'll have a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but there are a number of villages around the state where their primary source of revenue is the mayor's court. And probably people in this room have gotten that ticket going through Amelia. Wouldn't surprise me. These villages cost the state actually a lot of money. We have gasoline tax that gets as a formula that gets divided to the local governments, and villages get a chunk of that. I was actually, this might be my freshman term, I was studying this issue of perhaps forcing dissolutions of some of the smaller villages. So I actually had a list of all the municipalities in the state and sorted it by population, and just kind of drew a line, I don't know where it was, to drew a line someplace where it would make sense to, anything below a population of this number, and I remember Amelia would not have been on that list because it was way different from 5,000, but Newtonville might have been on the list, and say, okay, why do these villages exist? Well, as I was kind of going down this road and asking questions on this, what got complicated was the things that you're seeing now in Amelia, where, like in Newtonsville, it's more straightforward. Newtonsville, well, obviously, it's Wayne Township. It's, Newtonsville surrounded all four corners by Wayne Township. That's not true in Amelia, because you've got both Pierce and Batavia that are now dividing that up. So it got complicated. There wasn't a big demand for it, and I wound up not pursuing it. As John pointed out about Shiloh and Neville, that's been discussed before. I think it's been recently, and Shiloh was even on the ballot and to dissolve, and it did not dissolve. So begs the question, why does it even still exist? Well, people have not voted to dissolve it, which was where I was thinking, well, maybe we need some legislation at the state level to kind of force the issue, which I'm still not opposed to doing.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
I was heavily involved with Amelia dissolving, and I'm very supportive of people being able to have a choice every now and then on whether they wish to continue a unit of government. We are over-governed. We have too many positions. A lot of these small villages end up being little fiefdoms, their own little police force, their own 7-person council, and I don't notice the difference between the services I get in Union Township without all that versus the services somebody gets in Amelia. Just as a quick audience participation question on my part, how many people here tonight live in a village or a city? I don't, but I'm raising my hand since it's already. Anybody live in a village or a city? Okay. How many people want to move into a Clermont County village or city? Okay. Even the people that move into these areas, they move outside the city, and then they get worried, the city or village, and they get worried that they're going to get annexed. If you're in Batavia, Batavia's biggest economic strategy is to keep annexing places to get more income tax. A lot of these places charge an income tax. They're very inefficient. They're very fiefdom. It's very much something that's a drain the swamp type thing that needs to happen. And these people get stunned because they live in their little world of their village, and look what happened in Amelia. Anybody remember the vote? Over 2/3 of the people in Amelia voted to dissolve Amelia. So it's a wake-up call, and I think we can do just as good or better. The future growth engine for Ohio is going to be townships. Townships, you can't get rid of them. They're a fundamental unit of government in the Constitution. But you see all the action around Cincinnati, all the growth actions happening in townships. These little villages, they're just one last thing. A difference between a village and a city is how many people they have. So under 5,000 is a village, over 5,000 is a city. Amelia was going to become a city at the next census. Once they're a city, they can't dissolve. Most of these villages in Clermont County, the people should just have a choice, but most of them have existed for a really long time. They were trading posts and so forth back in time. And I think it's good for everybody to just think about whether they need to exist. If the people there want them to exist, fine. But I see it being good that it's on the ballot. Because I tell you what, when it's on the ballot, the government in most of these places becomes the best village government they've had in a long time when it's on the ballot that the people can dissolve it.
Thank you. I have one last question, and that is one thing. Thank you. Keep in mind, one thing. What is one thing that you would cut, and one thing that you would spend money on, or more money on? One thing you would cut if elected, and one thing you would spend money or more money on if it already exists. We'll start with Mr. Hicks. Your turn to go first.
This is not a big money thing, but I've always said this. I would cut the personal commissioner aides. So the commissioners, starting in 2018, Mr. Painter was big into this. He's the one who pushed it. They all got their own personal aides. We never had this before. One of the personal aides is the wife of Brad Winstrip's political director. One of them is the campaign photographer of the person who ran for office and former reporter in Hamilton County. And one of them, somebody, I don't know what their qualifications are. I'd get rid of that. There's a lot of things. That's my simplest thing. The one thing I would spend more on I don't know about spending more, but I would put more focus on getting government to be more quickly responsive, that Google your government type concept, that things are more available to people and there was more deliberation in front of people, like work sessions and so forth. So I don't know if that would cost more money, but that's what I would put more investment behind.
Thank you, Representative Becker.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about the answer. In terms of cutting, I did think of something in terms of spending more. I'll just start with that one since that's kind of still in my mind. So my first thought when you came and spending more is like, well, actually, I'm interested in spending less, not more. But I did mention earlier about an ombudsman, create that position to be looking at issues having to do with ethics and corruption. Again, I would like to maybe eliminate 2 positions to create one. Certainly as people retire, I guess this would be the answer to the cut. As people are retiring, well, first off, unless I'm sitting down with the administrator and we're doing some brainstorming and coming up with some ideas on how to restructure county government and maybe eliminate some agencies or scale them back or combine agencies. Sure, I'll be looking at all of that. I don't have a specific proposal along those lines, which is why I'm not giving any specifics here. I don't know. But as people are retiring, that's a good opportunity, especially management level people, directors. When they're retiring, that's really the best opportunity to start looking at, okay, can something be done with that agency to maybe combine services? Because now you don't have the person at the top now, especially again a director, who has this ownership of his own fiefdom. And it's kind of like, for example, when, as I've looked at, we talked about earlier with the sheriff covering sheriff coverage of police services versus the township having their own police services. As I've talked to people around the state about those types of things, what came back to me was these things usually occur when a local police, whoever's in charge, when he retires, so the chief of police retires. At that point, then, is when would be the opportunity to look at getting rid of the department entirely and having sheriff coverage.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw.
I put this in one of my earliest editorials or guest columns, so it's not a new idea, and I agree 100% with Chris. These personal aides are unneeded. This thing, I think it's called a smartphone. You can set appointments in there if you need to. Microsoft Office, Outlook, that does all those things. You can set appointments, times, schedules, all those things, and it communicates to you and tells you, hey, you got a meeting at 10 o'clock. I can handle that. So I think getting rid of these aides would be one way to save money. It's not a ton of money, but it's just the principle of it. This is not New York City or something where we're not that big a county. I think a commissioner can handle their own schedule, and they can go to a breakfast just as easy as an aide can. So that's where I would start. One area I would look to add money, and I would consult with the sheriff on. I think core services are very important. I would spend more money on drug treatment. Our police departments spend a lot of time arresting people, and they get put back out in the street, and they don't ever get cured. I've heard of people come out of the jail and they go move down to Felicity because there's nowhere else to go. So Felicity's like, we've got people living underneath trees and underneath trailers, and we don't know what to do with these people. And drug treatment is something we need to spend more money on. Our sheriff's department, I think, needs more money. So that's one area I'd be willing to spend more money.
Thank you. That concludes, unless anyone from the audience has any more questions to submit, that concludes our question Q&A. I'd like to give each candidate a few minutes here to make a closing statement, and I think let's just stay with you, Mr. McGraw, with your closing argument, sir.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you again for doing this. We appreciate it. Getting a little bit of attention out here in Clermont County, no matter who wins. I'm just trying to picture if these two guys win, how things would fundamentally change. And if Chris and I got both elected, how things would change. No matter what, I think you'd see a fundamental change, no matter if it's John or John gets elected. I think it's important to know that people you elect in this election could be there a long time. Incumbency out here is everything. We have commissioners that are there for a long time. So this is an important decision to make because the commissioner you elect on March 17th is going to be there for a long time. So I think that's something to consider. Economic development is very important. Our economic development department in Clermont County is decimated. Everybody's either quit or got fired. So in Union Township, we have a township administrator and we got a planning director. And we have done more economic development in Union Township than all of what Clermont County's efforts combined have done. So you don't need a huge department to run economic development. You just need people who are engaged with the local community, engaged with local developers, and they know they can count on coming in and getting a good meeting and getting good information. So that's important. But I'm not all about big developments. I love getting 1,000 new jobs, but I'm also like, I want to make sure fire hydrants work. I'm a township trustee. That's not my job. That's the water department. People call me and say, John, I got this fire hydrant's been on my street for 6 months. It's got this out of service tag. Well, who fixes that? It's not. I can say, well, it's not my job. You need to call the water department. I don't do that. I call the water department because I think a small problem like that is huge to that person. And I think it's important. The small problems are huge to me. So I'll get the fire hydrant fixed. And I've done a lot of them. So I know how to do it now. So as you learn these things, it does help out. And, you know, every decision, everything you vote on has an effect on someone. It might be positive, it might be negative. I got a couple friends out here that don't want to see me get elected because they're not happy with the way I voted on a project that was in their neighborhood. But I understand the ramification of this kind of decisions, and every decision is important to somebody. It may be negative or positive, so I take that seriously. So thank you all for coming, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Representative Becker.
Sure. You know, I can tell you what kind of role or what kind of commission I would be based on what I've done in the past. This is where I say I'm vetted, tested, and proven. So for example, when I first got involved in politics in the early 90s, I was a regular precinct committeeman. When I first got involved in the party, Clermont County Republican Party, I didn't even know what a precinct was. Never heard of it. So I got involved, started working on campaigns, helping out, doing all the good things that political activists are supposed to do. Then I got elected to this position called Republican State Center Committee. That was in 2004. So that was, I guess, 11 years later after getting involved in local politics. So that position didn't pay anything. There was no benefits. I ran for it because I wanted to step up. I wanted to do more. And that position covered 5 counties. It was at that time, it was before redistricting. We redistrict every 10 years. It went all the way from Clermont County to halfway across Lawrence County. Today, it doesn't go quite halfway across Lawrence County. It stops in just outside of Ironton in Cole Grove. But anyway, that's a volunteer position. I don't get paid for mileage. I get reimbursed for nothing. Everything's out of my pocket. And I worked that job hard. And they love me out there. Because here's a guy from the state that's paying attention to us out in these rural communities, people that are accustomed to being ignored. And they don't like being ignored. Nobody likes being ignored. So I was out there working with them. Sometimes I'd be in their parades. Sometimes I'd be helping them with their candidates. Just showing up means a whole lot. And so across 5 counties and going to county fairs and stuff, I was doing all that stuff, getting paid nothing. So then when I got elected to being a state representative, again, well, now I'm getting paid, but I'm still doing the same stuff. Or I shouldn't say same stuff, it's actually different stuff. But in terms of the activity and going the extra mile and continuing to be out and meeting with people, yeah, that'll continue and will continue as a commissioner. So again, I've earned the title of being one of the most conservative legislators in the General Assembly. My platform has always been pro-life, pro-gun, limited government, low taxes, because those are the issues. I didn't do any polling on any of that. That's the stuff I always believed in. That's why I got involved in politics to begin with. And that's why it's never changed, because that's how I'm wired. Those are my core values. And just close with, again, that I am the candidate who is vetted, tested, and proven.
Thank you. Mr. Hicks.
I just want to say in the race that's Bonnie Batchler, John Becker, and John McGraw, I encourage everybody here to vote for John. So,
I'll take that.
The thing about tonight is, the three of us.
I read to say in the ground rules, no dad jokes, all right?
Okay.
Sorry, cut you off.
The thing tonight, I appreciate people coming tonight, and I appreciate you guys, saying when the League of Women Voters canceled their thing, that we should still do something to be before the people. The two people that aren't here are the endorsed Clermont GOP Republican candidates. And one of them on Saturday night, when the people, I know how they responded, Mr. Painter never responded to this event. But he responded to the other event to somebody who had asked him on our committee. You guys, we're on the Union Township Republican Committee. Why would he come to a forum when he was already endorsed? And I'm so excited about the ideas. I wrote down that we're seeing when we have discussion and we talk about things. The school safety thing that you brought up, John, I never quite thought about this way, the county's role in school safety, because I think that's an important consideration for people coming. The ombudsman or inspector general thing, I never thought about. I think I'd make a great ombudsman, so if I don't win, you can hire me as the ombudsman. Could you imagine? There. So I think that under the covers, our county government is in crisis. And there's a lot of spackle on it right now. The party's in crisis, and it is a good crisis. Because it's the crisis that can transform us into the next generation of what we should be. And I think the guys that you see here are all people, unfortunately in your guys' race, only one of you can win. But are people that are not, for whatever our faults are individually, we all try our darndest, we all try to be honest, we all, to the best of our ability, we all try to answer questions, we all don't duck events. And so I hope that in the race I'm in, which is against Commissioner Painter, that you guys give me your vote and tell your friends to give me your vote. And I want to finish with one little last thing. Is when I filed petitions, somebody who I really respect came to me and said, "Are you running to win, or are you running just to F with the system?" Okay, and it wasn't my wife. My wife might ask me this. But in my answer at the time, I thought about it, and honestly, I filed petitions real quick, and I hadn't really totally internalized it. And I looked at the state of our county government. John mentioned the entire economic development department is gone. The assistant administrator's gone and not been replaced. I can't not win. I gotta win. You need to help me to win, because we gotta fix this. We have got to fix our county. We have so much potential, and it is so much sapped by an ineffective, hapless, self-serving leadership that we have right now, and all those little corruption things that we talked about here today. So help one of these guys get elected and help me get elected. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to say, thank you to the audience and the great questions, and also thank you to the folks watching wherever you're watching, around the world maybe even, on the Clermont Sun Facebook page. If you invited someone, they couldn't come tonight, friend, family member, whatever, just they can rewatch that on the Clermont Sun Facebook page, facebook.com/Clermont Sun. Be the archive there. You'll have a call square with Brett. Brett does a great job. He's one of our former interns at the Inquirer, is a rising star in journalism, so thanks. Thank you to all. Give him another round of applause.